Meanwhile, Boston is 1-2 on their 5-game trip, including that brutal loss in Phoenix Sunday. We'll get to that in a moment. And the blown lead Monday against the Clippers, after which Isaiah Thomas made headlines by venting about Brad Stevens' lineups.
Yeah, we should have won this game. We should have won last night. We can't be experimenting in game 63. I try to let him coach. I mean, he's a very smart dude, and he does a good job of the substitution patterns. But like tonight, I didn't say nothing to him. So maybe I should have, but I mean, it is what it is. We'll figure it out.
And Isaiah Thomas walked that back a little bit today at shoot-around, saying, quote, "I didn't mean to throw anybody under the bus." Later on, he said, "I was frustrated." Brad Stevens said Thomas called him to clarify, and everything is hunky-dory in Boston right now. Did you make anything of that?
I made everything out of it because what you just said, Matt. Everything is because of the way they handle it. He called him. They got a chance to talk to it. It wasn't blown out of proportion. They didn't start asking other players, and they chimed in. I think the one thing is I just look at the Boston Celtics track record. They haven't had pretty much nothing come out of there. You don't see guys complaining about minutes. You don't see guys complaining about Isaiah Thomas taking shots, fourth quarter. They just come out and play winning basketball. And so I like the way Isaiah Thomas and also Brad Stevens handled it even after. That was a little bit of frustration.
And Brad Stevens explained afterward, look, we were down players. You know, we had fouls. We had Al Horford out. We played who we had available to us, which was an extremely small lineup at times on Monday with Jay Crowder playing center at one point.
Yeah, I think when you've had your fingers on the winning formula the way the Celtics have, anything that throws Isaiah Thomas out of his rhythm would cause him to react like that. And the losing certainly doesn't help. But this is not one of those deals where I'm worried about there being some, crack in the foundation of what they've built this year in Boston. I think, first and foremost, they got to have their roster fully healthy or as close to fully healthy as possible to be the kind of team they want to be in the playoffs this year. And I think they're feeling just a little bit, Smitty, of that pressure right now, realizing what's at stake every night down the stretch of a season where you're fighting for playoff position and trying to get that number 2 seed, trying to make sure you have the road you want to travel come playoff time as opposed to the road that's thrown upon you based on how you finish. So I'm not worried about it, but I do think it's important that somebody, and Isaiah Thomas, if somebody's going to say something about it on that team, it needs to be him. He needs to step up and say it. Then he needs to step up and own it and have the onus of going to Brad Stevens and clearing the air after he's done it.
Right. They've lost 5 of 8 now. They got Washington breathing down their necks there, even though they're only 3 back of Cleveland for the number 1 spot. And if we have the video, the game Sunday, if you didn't see what happened to the Celtics Sunday, there's a good reason Isaiah Thomas and the C's to have been a little sour on Monday after blowing back-to-back games, because this was ridiculous. 5 points in about 4 seconds for the Phoenix Suns, with Tyler Ulis hitting a buzzer-beating, game-winning three-pointer after the Celtics just failed to inbound the ball.
And that's tough, and that's one of those frustrating losses. You give Phoenix, just on paper, you're supposed to beat the Phoenix Suns. But then, like you said, to have those unbelievable turnover at the end, they knock down a big-time shot, and then you go in and lose your next game. It's just frustrating. And I think for those guys I still look at, if you take their roster as far as experience and all-stars and match it up against Cleveland, obviously there's no doubt that's Cleveland Cavaliers. But they're still only three back with this losing streak. So I like where Boston is. I think, like you said, it's more not maybe catching Cleveland, is that Washington is on their back, and they don't want Washington to be able to catch them.
And Washington's been fantastic lately. Big for Boston. Al Horford, I'm hearing, is going to be back tonight. He didn't play on Monday. But as big as Horford has been for them, getting Avery Bradley back in their lineup over the last week or two from that Achilles injury that kept him out so long just changes their defense for the better. So significantly. You're talking about one of the best on-ball defenders in the entire league.
Yeah, and I think one of the most underrated, defenders in the game right now. Really, I don't know if people understand just what kind of impact he makes, with his on-ball defense, not just on point guards. He guards bigger guys. I mean, he's got the athleticism and exquisite timing to really, stretch himself in terms of his size and the parameters of what he can cover on the floor. And I think it also takes a ton of pressure off of Isaiah Thomas on the defensive end, not getting lost and put in matchups where he's going to be taking advantage.
So, Kumat, just a couple things about Avery Bradley. One, is you saw what he did against Kyrie Irving, one of the best in the business, the best ball handler, one of the best guards. I look at him and say, Sekou said it best, he doesn't get enough recognition. Reason why, Matt and Sekou, what have you played in my era when you could hand check?
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
He's doing all this against one of the best we've ever seen handle the basketball, and you can't touch. I mean, you can't even get a little feel, and it's a foul. So for have a guy like that, that's Kyrie. Anybody else, I call him the blanket. You just throw him on there and tie him up, he's done, and that helps your defense. You're not fouling, you're not getting broken down, guys getting threes. But I think the stats that we just saw, Avery Bradley's averages 17 points.
I was going to say, he's one of the better two-way players in the league.
0.4 rebounds at his size. That's missing a lot in their lineup.
Not just a defender. They can throw all kinds of versatile defenders in the backcourt in particular at Cleveland or whoever they face come playoff time.